So hello, everyone. Good morning, good morning, good morning. My name is Vanetta Hawkins, and I am the co-chair for the NCJAR's Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee. Our chairperson, Wendy Worthy, and I would really like to welcome you to our 7th webinar in our series on diversity, equity, and inclusion. It's really NCJAR's vision to create a more diverse, equitable, and inclusive professional community in which all members are empowered to learn, thrive, and work as agents for change. We are really committed to our diverse membership, creating a deeply equitable and inclusive organization that will really help our members work and lead from one another. So today, we bring to you a panel of leaders in the field of DE&I, and our panelists will really impart a wealth, guys, a wealth, like seriously, a wealth of information and resources that our members can really utilize in serving diverse markets, building relationships, and better servicing the public. And I will also even just add the fact that Bill Flagg, our incoming 2022 president, really was the spearhead leader in putting this together. And we really thank him for his visionary leadership, for jumping right into 2022, high road for supporting him along that journey and really packaging this up and reaching out to our guest speakers. So without further ado, I am going to just really quickly introduce our 3 speakers that we have, and then just allow them to just elaborate a little bit, and then we'll just get into our panel discussion. So to start off with, I will say, I feel like he needs no introduction. However, in case you were like, I don't know where, and do not know our fabulous National Association of Realtors president, Charlie Oppler. So Charlie, if you can please just let our audience know, who you are, who you're representing here today, so they can get a little feel of, all the fabulous that I'm already aware of.
Thanks, Vanetta. And I thought you were talking about Matt.
Oh, we can't hear you.
I can hear you guys.
No.
I can hear him. No. I can hear him.
Maybe.
Can you hear me?
I can hear him.
Matt, Adrian?
Yep. Okay. I'm hearing you.
I'm sorry. It's me.
Okay. As Vanetta was introducing everyone, it almost sounded like she was going to introduce Matt or Adrian, because I've seen them make presentations both in person and via a virtual setting. So for me, it's an honor just to be on a panel with the 2 of them, because they're really engaged with membership across the country. So to both of you, thank you for joining us today. For me, it's really been a continuation of where I think the National Association of Realtors really needed to take a step up. In 2018, President Elizabeth Mendenhall hosted an event to commemorate the 50th anniversary of the Fair Housing Act. I also knew at that point it was going to be in 2021 when I would have an opportunity to see what's happened in the last 3 years and make sure that we really moved things forward. In 2020, and Matt will certainly talk about this, we as an association took a huge step forward with a change to the Code of Ethics to try to eliminate hate speech and certainly make it part of a concerted effort to move this association forward to make sure that everybody gets treated equally. I've been asked a lot why, and I think we all have our whys. For me, there's a whole lot of things. As you know, I started this year, basically my first day on the job, and we all look at things a little differently. My first day, we had the Department of Justice file a complaint against the National Association of Realtors, which had been in the works for over 2 years. And you all know the history on that, and that's not what this is about, but we have our own challenge with the Department of Justice, and we think they're in the wrong. Secondly, I did a session with Brian Green, and Brian's our chief public advocacy officer, and he worked for HUD for 29 years in fair housing. He joined us before the social unrest and the murder of George Floyd. So we were already focused on having to make changes at the National Association of Realtors. I thought it was important for us to own our involvement and own the fact that we were part of the problem. We were part of a situation, if you will, and I don't know if that's the right word, but we were part of what created a racial wealth gap. And we did not look at housing as available to all people. So now we've taken that step forward. The old Chinese proverb, the best time to plant a tree is 50 years ago. Well, the next best time is now. That's what this is about. This is about now. What can we do differently that we didn't do before? That's where Adrian's involved. That's where Matt's involved, and Bill Flagg and Vanetta, and so many of us that see, you know what, this was wrong. It's been wrong for a long time. And how do we change things? For me, it's personal. And it's personal because I look at my company with 700 agents. We speak 40 languages. We've got people from all over in northern New Jersey that I never thought were any different than me. They work with me, not for me. More importantly, I have a biracial grandson. I want to make sure he gets the same opportunities that everybody gets. And that's important because I get concerned about profiling. I get concerned about everything that troubles all of us. I also had the opportunity to watch my son, Jason, who played AAU basketball, be the only white player on an all-black team. Never realized the opportunities that he had differently than his teammates. But his teammates taught me a lot about the acceptance and treating him like one of anybody else. And I became close to a lot of those kids. And I saw the ups and downs and seeing a teammate of theirs murdered at 15 years old in Paterson, New Jersey. And saying, what can I do differently to give all of these kids a chance? And Jason is still friends with many of them. In fact, one of his teammates will play pro football most likely next year and is a senior at Boston College. Texted him once when we were all just having a conversation around our table. And this young man asked about how my wife and I were, and thanked Jason for being his first white friend at 15 years old. That means something. That tells me we had a long way to go. So what have we done in 2021? We made sure that the leadership team learned more about fair housing, the board of directors, and so many other committee chairs. And then we've asked this to take place around the country to look at the immersive simulation video called Fairhaven, which is an hour and a half. And it teaches you how to transact and abide by the fair housing laws. Second, there's a 45-minute video on implicit bias, how you naturally react and how you do things on a day-to-day basis. Are you treating everybody equally? Are you subconsciously discriminating against somebody, and why? And then we asked our leadership teams to take the At Home with Diversity certification, which is an 8-hour course, which over 1,000 members make up this group that was challenged. And to my knowledge, over 700 have completed all three, including the At Home with Diversity certification. We also implemented the ACT acronym, Accountability, Culture Change, and Training. This started in 2020, and it just reminds all of us that we are responsible for our actions, that fair housing is not a word, it's not a movement, it's a culture. We've got to create the culture better so that we all have the opportunity to work in this market, to sell homes in this market, to trade real estate on the commercial level, rentals, so on and so forth. Everybody's got to be treated the same. And then lastly, we worked underserved communities to create a mentorship mentee program where we're trying to teach so many kids in high school the opportunity that real estate's given all of us in so many different disciplines. It could be in sales, like many of us do, organized real estate like this, marketing, technology, accounting, home improvement, landscaping, so on and so forth. So this video is about an hour and a half, and it shows all the different opportunities for kids, hopefully in the high schools. And we're trying to work with many cities. Right now, we have 9 pilot programs that we hope will be doubled or tripled next year. Our staff at the National Association of Realtors has really taken this program and reached so many other areas. We're working with the city of Chicago. We've met with the mayor about getting this program in all the schools. So it's a great opportunity for us to teach the youth about our business. And lastly, and really, I think what moves me is that with Brian Green and with so many of our staff and volunteers, we have a real partnership to continue to move this association forward. And, being president this year is just a title for a year. You're part of a leadership team, and leadership is forever in my mind. Just because I'm not president next year doesn't mean I'm not going to be involved just at the same level. Just like Matt and Adrian and so many others, Vanetta, Bill, once you get on this journey, it's about how you make others feel and how you empower others to do things. And I hope this year, one of the biggest takeaways is that I've surrounded myself with a fabulous group of practitioners and individuals that I know are smarter than me, work just as hard as I do, if not harder, but care about others. And when you care about others, you can make a difference. And I really am honored to be the leadoff speaker here today. President Bill and Jairo, your 2 leaders at the North Central Jersey, I think are embarking on a great journey to continue the growth of your association and its position as one of the leaders in our business. So congratulations to all of you. It's an honor to be here. And thank you for the opportunity. Vanetta, I'll turn it back to you.
Awesome, Charlie. I love it. It was a lot of great takeaways from what you spoke about. One of the first things I would say, just really around owning the involvement. From a NAR perspective, when you stepped into the position, and it's really not about the past, but about the now. How can, as you say, you empower, empower others to really move the dial forward and to continue to move the dial forward. And also I think I really loved the personal component, how it impacted you. How many people can say, when was the first time they ever met a white person or somebody of a different race than themselves? Like, is that even for the average person, it's not something that they really think about the first time they met, a person of a different race. But it was an experience that, someone that you encounter with by meeting your own child. We never really think of things and how they impact our lives. But look at something so small, your son joining a basketball team and how it really changed, part of the trajectory of how you may see things as well.
Yeah. And I would even say that he was invited because he played in some tournaments and, Jason was a pretty good player, but I give credit to there was a coach in Patterson who really was concerned about the kids and making sure that they didn't get into trouble. So they would practice 3 hours a day, 3 times a week, because Roger knew he could keep them off the streets, the kids, and from getting in trouble. So, I used to look at practice on Fridays and know that 2 or 3 of the kids would come over. And the next thing you know, they're there for the weekend. My first thought is, did they clear it with their parents? Well, not everybody has a 2-parent household. So there are a lot of things that you learn culturally that are different. But it got to the point where some of the kids would come over and, they'd go into the pantry and say, how come this cereal's not here or that cereal? Or things we take for granted. Some of the kids wanted to come over because we had internet and they didn't.
Right,
and
right.
this goes back, 10 years.
It's okay.
Or,
I'll get you.
So things are different for everybody, but everybody deserves a chance. And Roger gave Jason a chance to make new friends and just be part of a group of guys that, throw the ball on the court. And the innocence of kids should teach all of us as adults lessons.
I love it. I love it. And it's so true. And, I love the 3 pillars around with from NCJAR, the education component and all the training that was created, and not just created and available, because sometimes you can have tools, but if they're not utilized, they're really useless. So I love the tools that were created and the intentionality around getting the board of directors to take the training, getting people, that's involved with from a leadership perspective to all make sure that they're, have taken the training and have the understanding as well. I think that's great leadership and really speaks volumes.
Well, I appreciate that. And, we've got a lot of great leaders at the National Association. So again, it's empowering others to feel comfortable that, there's right and wrong. And there's nothing on this that says we don't have a choice. We need to be proactive because it's not just the Black and brown community. It's everybody deserves the same opportunity to own and rent property.
Exactly.
And it hasn't always been that way. So, if you look at the reports on the Hispanic wealth community, it's expected to be 70% of new owners in the next 20 years. NAREB's had their own, as report as well. And we're seeing that also in other areas. So we know that this is, it's just what the future is. And the quicker we get to the future, the better we're all going to be.
And Charlie, you bring that data and that data is so crucial to what we're trying to do and really have the conversation around race and real estate. When I think about the fact that 76% of housing formations today are diverse houses. So, and then, they say in the next 30 years, it's going to be 102%. I don't even know what a 2% came, but that means that all housing formations in the next 30 years are going to be a diverse household. So we need to get ahead of the game. And the last component you had mentioned was that culture shift. That's what it is. Like we have got, it's not just changing, adding some new training and doing a little bit of this. It's legitimately changing the culture of how we interact. So I love it. I love it.
I'll leave you with one last thought. Jeffrey Hicks, who was the president in 2018 and 2019 of the National Association of Real Estate Brokers, which really began because those members of the Black community weren't allowed to be part of the National Association of Realtors. That's the history of NAREB. And Jeffrey said to me very simply, I'll know we have true diversity when there's a white person who's a chairperson of that committee, because that means the most qualified person was selected, not just a minority as a placeholder.
I love it. I love it. And Jeffrey was a great leader.
And I took that and said to Jeffrey, you're right. And I was lucky enough to have Michelle Walker from Missouri as our chairperson. And Michelle is really, super engaged. And again, hopefully we've taken another step forward. And I know the National Association of Realtors is committed, and you'll see this motion and movement continue, hopefully for many years. And we need to hold ourselves accountable.
I love it. I love it. Well, Charlie, I just want to say thank you so much. I know we're going to have you at the end, but this dialogue right here just really sets the stage for kind of where we're going with the rest of our conversation with Adrian and Matt. But thank you definitely for kicking off with the why behind why for NAR and why for Charlie. So thank you for that. All right, guys. Well, I am going to bring in our next speaker, who's also going to do a presentation, and his name is Adrian Garcia. Let's get Adrian on the video. Okay. All right. So perfect. Oh, there you go. Hi, Adrian.
Hi. How are you?
Fabulous. Living my best life as always. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm great to. I'm very gratified to be here. I'm appreciative. I see we have a great big room with a lot of people, so I'm very thrilled to be here. Thank you very much to Bill for the invitation.
I love it. So guys, so we have a great speaker here. So Adrian is actually the director of fair housing in Pennsylvania. And today we're really going to talk about with him around, furthering fair housing and promoting diverse and inclusive communities. So Adrian, if you want to maybe give just our audience a little bit of more a backdrop about who you are, and then maybe go right into your presentation, if that's good.
Thank you. Yes, I'll do that. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for being here. And again, thank you, Bill. Thank you, all the staff. You've been so kind, and your invitation is well received. And I bring greetings from the Executive Director and Commission at the Pennsylvania Human Relations Commission, where I serve as the Director of Fair Housing and Commercial Property. And before that job, I worked as the Housing Equality and Equity Institute Director for a CDFI that did, first-time home buyer programs and some other block grant stuff. And in my function there, what I wanted to do while I was there was bring to life elements of fair housing. And we did that through some programs that I'll talk about in a little bit. Before that, I actually started in this world as an intake officer. So every complaint that was being received at the commission where I served, I would get those, and I would have to draft the complaints. And then after about 3 years of doing that, I moved on to do investigations and tried to do conciliations as many times as I could, but many times people don't want to conciliate. And so what I've learned is that you have to kind of adjust your tone for the different scenarios that you find yourself in, right? I'm in an enforcement capacity now. Before, when I was at the HEI, I was at the education and outreach component, no enforcement whatsoever. And so I did a lot of what I'm doing here today, a lot of talking to everyone. And I've learned that, there's a different way to get people to lean in to you, to be able to grasp the idea of fair housing and what our topic is going to be today. As an investigator going through an investigation, I had to, be creative, spontaneous. I had to be crafty and creative just to be able to find some truth, because there's two sides to every story. What I've learned is that many people have the perception that the Fair Housing Act and these regulations are designed for only one group of people, which is not the case. And we're going to talk about that today. I'll go ahead and get started on my presentation. As I said, I work with the PHRC. It's the leading civil rights enforcement commission in the state of Pennsylvania, empowered by the Pennsylvania Human Relations Act. And we have a mission, two-part mission, to enforce the federal non-discrimination laws like the Pennsylvania Human Relations Act, the Pennsylvania Fair Education Opportunities Act, and we also, through our work share with the Department of Housing and Urban Development, enforce the Federal Fair Housing Act, and we promote equal opportunity for all. As you can see, we have a big area, and we have 3 regional offices, and they're depicted there by the different shadings or colors. And in all those areas, we have advisory councils that are Pennsylvania Human Relations Commission advisory councils. They meet once a month. They are our ears on the ground. They tell us what's going on. If there are hate crimes anywhere in the state, we have people that will address those through initiatives that we have. We have 3 regional offices, as I said, with 3 regional directors and 3 separate teams. And this is the best and most efficient way for us to be able to collect those regional complaints, investigate those regional complaints with people that are on the ground, that are from that area, and have a lay of the land. Let's see here. So our mission, obviously, is to promote equal opportunity for all and enforce the Pennsylvania civil rights laws that protect people from unlawful discrimination. Now, let's get to why we're here, right? I want to be able to talk about the Fair Housing Act because what I'm going to talk about is something that really doesn't come up all that often. And if it does, it comes up kind of sparingly, right? And so my hope today is to be able to impart upon you a better understanding of the intent of the Fair Housing Act, right? We're going to get into the history of it with Matt, and we'll let Matt deal that. He's got a great presentation. I can't wait until he unfolds it. But I'm gonna touch upon a little bit of the history where we're at now. Hopefully in the next little bit of time that I have here. So the Fair Housing Act, which is also known as Title 8, prohibits discrimination on the sale, rental, and financing of housing based on race, color, national origin, religion, sex, familial status, and disability. What's interesting is that the New Jersey state law against discrimination has all those protected classes and then some. It's got creed, ancestry, marital or domestic partnerships or civil union status, gender identity or expression, affectional or sexual orientations. It's got source of lawful income or source of lawful rent payments, such as rental assistance from the Housing Choice Voucher Program known as Section 8, and there are others. I want to applaud New Jersey for this act. It is a step in the right direction and very much akin to what we're going to be covering today. Okay, so we're going to go right into what I want to cover because you are all real estate experts. You've been through thousands upon thousands of fair housing training. So what you just saw on that previous slide, that's as far as I'm going to go. We're trying to teach you what fair housing is. What I want to do is I want to get
Adrian.
Yes.
If I can, are you moving the slides? Because we're still on the first one.
Yeah, I'm moving.
There we go, Houston.
Is that it?
That is it. So we see the whole, it's a slide mode now. Okay, it's moving. We're moving and shaking, people.
Eureka,
there you go.
Eureka.
Dun,
Wow.
da, da, da. All right.
Okay, thank you so much. And thank you all for your patience. I know how aggravating that can be. But as I was saying, I don't want to talk about the Fair Housing Act. You've been through thousands of trainings on that. So I want to talk about the fact that there's a portion of it that's been ignored since 1968. And that portion is going to answer a lot of the questions as to, well, why are we still going through this? Why are we still talking about wealth disparities, education gaps, health disparities? What's that got to do with housing? Well, there are two goals to the Fair Housing Act. The first one has to do with ending discrimination and promoting diverse, inclusive communities. And how do we do that? Well, we end discrimination, unfortunately, by being reactionary to events of discrimination, right? So someone brings a case and you investigate it and you enforce it and so on and so forth. You can investigate, mediate, conciliate, or litigate that case. And that's been our mantra, to be reactive. And so there's also a proactive goal of the Fair Housing Act, and that's the second goal, which is referred to as affirmatively furthering fair housing, or AFFH. It embodies our strongly held American values of fair access and equal opportunity. But wait, equal opportunity, well, what is that? Let's take a look at this picture here that seems pretty benign, right? Gentlemen are lined up. They're going to run an oval track, maybe one lap, maybe two, who knows? The point here is that they're all starting from the same place. So you would look at this and say, okay, well, this is going to be a fair race because they're going to run one lap around the oval and they have all lined up in the same place. You can see them all in the starting block. Except that anybody that's ever run a oval track or track and field, they know that the individual on the inside of the track has an advantage or a privilege, if you will, because they're on the inside of the track, whereas the further out you go in every lane, the further the distance to get to the same place is. So this is a perfect illustration that equality doesn't necessarily mean that it's fair. What it's doing is it's just starting people at the same place, giving everyone the same shot, so it would seem, right? So in this particular case, giving everyone the same doesn't necessarily lead to what you're trying to find out or what you're trying to achieve. You're trying to make sure that everybody has the same access and opportunity. And I submit to you that in this case, even though we're starting from the same place, we are not having the same opportunity. Now, this depicts a different story. This depicts an accurate story that these people will run one lap around the oval. But in order to compensate for the distance that every lane, starting from the inside, must run, you have to adjust the lane so that they all run the same distance. Okay? So let's put this in terms of our experience in real estate. Okay? There are programs out there that are designed in the rental community. We'll talk about that one first. In the rental community, you have individuals with disabilities that may not have equal access to housing because of their barriers. Now let's put that in the context of this track. These tracks represent the resources that are being allocated to meet the individual where they're at and consider the barriers that they have to attaining that housing. Okay, so I submit to you, for example, the program Section 811, which is designed for individuals that are 18 to 61 years of age to be able to live on their own with some supports. There are individuals that are disabled that may be coming out of a rehabilitative hospital, but can live on their own as long as they have some additional support. So there's funding for the Section 811 individuals, right? That's not the same as Section 8. Section 8, or the Housing Choice Voucher, is another instrument of equity designed to meet people where they are, not where we think they need to be, in order to provide them the equal opportunity to be able to get to a rental housing. When you're looking at the sales, you have down payment cost closing, down payment assistance programs. You have first-time home buyer programs, because we're not all starting from the same place. We're starting in a different lane, starting from a different block. And that block needs to be adjusted to meet me where I am so I can have the same opportunity. In short, equality, sure, that's what we all want. But equity, the adjustment of the blocks, recognizing that we're starting from different places with different barriers, that's equity. So equality is what we want, but equity is how we get there. Okay, I won't belabor that point. I'll just move on and talk to you a little bit more about the affirmatively furthering fair housing, because I wanted to give you an idea that Congress intended HUD programs, and this is, I think, the misnomer, right? Because in many of my investigations, I've heard owners say, well, we don't receive HUD funding, so that doesn't apply to us. And in some cases, it may very well be, but if you're working as a landlord, if you're working as a real estate property manager, if you're working as a individual that's working through pass-through funding, it's HUD funding that went through to a first-time home buyer program and so on and so forth, it's been filtered to several times, then yeah, you have an obligation. And so the way the law was written, it's kind of written as if to say HUD's got this responsibility. But the truth of the matter is that Congress intended the HUD programs to be used to expand housing choices, to make all neighborhood places of opportunity by providing their residents with access to the community assets and resources they need to flourish. Unfortunately, too many of the jurisdictions, they take HUD funding, but they don't make that happen, right? And so what they wanted to do is make sure that all their programs, the people that administer the programs, the activities related to it, that they are all affirmatively furthering fair housing. So that means that the recipients that have that AFF obligation must be proactive in combating segregation. So who are some of these recipients? We're going to get to that in a little bit. That's why they have the analysis of impediments. Don't know if you've ever heard of that, but every state, every county has to go through an analysis of impediments or the assessment to fair housing choice. And this is where they fill out those grids, those Excel sheets. Not only did you have to tell me what you're doing to affirmatively furthering fair housing, but you got to show me that you did it. And that's the part that's been missing. Again, this has been part of the Fair Housing Act since 1968. Unfortunately, we, the global we, the society we, have basically left it to the executive branch of our government to play ping pong with the AFFH, which is, incorrect. This is part of the law. This is something that should be done. And that's why you see that nothing's really happened with the AFFH until 2015, when Obama took office. And he actually took a real stab. He and his administration said, we need to put some teeth on this. And we need to make this permanent. This is part of the law. So they made a definition, the AFFH rule. The definition was taking meaningful actions in addition to combating discrimination that overcome patterns of segregation, foster inclusive communities free from barriers that restrict access opportunities based on protected characteristics. He covered everything here. They covered everything. We got to eliminate the segregation. We've got to make sure that we foster inclusive communities free from barriers and restrict access. So he's talking to the developers. He's talking to the planners. He's talking to municipal government. He's talking to HUD programs that are providing these different vouchers. And then in 2020, you saw what happened when Trump came to office. He looked at that and basically said, we're going to change the definition. Now, I will say this, when they took the first stab at it, they were going to basically hold municipalities accountable. And I remember, and I still have a copy of that proposal. What they were going to do was they were going to actually make people accountable. They were going to take money away from states that were not affirmatively furthering fair housing. That's what they were going to do. That was their initial proposal. We're going to take money from people that aren't doing affirmatively furthering fair housing. But here comes the election, and election means I want to be voted. So I got to rally my base, right? And so he basically, some people would say he stripped the AFFH. I will tell you that as an individual in an enforcement capacity, you may look at it as he stripped it. I will look at it as you just broadened my powers for enforcement. And that's exactly the instructions that I gave to all of our investigators. Because that definition, actions that promote any aspect or aspects of Fair Housing Act affirmatively furthers fair housing. That was his definition, very simple, right? So I submit that actions that do not promote any aspect or aspects of fair housing is contrary to affirmatively furthering fair housing, and therefore ripe fruit for the picking for us. Okay? So you can always look at things two ways, right? So some of the provisions, and I'm not going to bore you with this, but I think that one of the things that's important for you to know is that every single municipality out there must do these studies, whether it's the assessment of fair housing or the analysis to fair housing choice, or the impediments, the analysis of impediments to fair housing. And so right now, where we are with the affirmatively furthering fair housing rule is we are in an interim state. So everything from 2015 is currently on the books. Is certainly something that we can use. It's the interim rule because there's another rule that Trump kind of played around with, which was the disparate impact rule. And that's the one where I think real estate gets affected the most, right? Because there's a lot of desktop underwriting that goes on from the lending side. And so they petitioned, I think it was the lending and insurance companies, anyone that's doing that underwriting work, they were petitioning or lobbying for those rules to change, that disparate impact rule. And under Trump's administration, it did change a little bit. It changed, actually, for the complainant, it changed a lot because it held a higher standard for you to be able to bring a disparate impact claim or a complaint. You had to meet 5 criteria, which I won't go into now because that law is no longer in effect. So right now, the Biden administration is looking at the last disparate impact rule and is looking to use that. They may change and tweak it a little bit to make it more accessible for people and loosen the burden for people that might bring a complaint. This is where I'm going to stop and say that many times when I worked for the Housing Equality and Equity Institute, I heard real estate agents say, oh yeah, that first time home buyer program, yeah, I'm never going to use that. I'm never going to send my people to that. I want you to know that that kind of thought process might be counter to what you really are trying to do, which is sell homes. It is cumbersome. It is fraught with regulation, and it does take time. And the reason it takes time is because it's an instrument of equity. It's because the individuals operating a first-time home buyer program are not doing a desktop underwriting when they're doing their lending. What they're doing is they're looking at every individual individually. Every case is individual, and they're looking at their finances, and they're looking at their income to debt ratio, and pulling together mitigating documents for that. That is an instrument of equity that allows an individual to be able to gain access to a home that otherwise may not be a reality for them. And so I want you to go away today, hopefully thinking about, you know what, maybe I'll take a couple of those. I know it takes time and and this is a very competitive world. I get it. But just for me, that's what you can do, is to take that concern and say, I'm going to put at least one or two listings I'm going to dedicate that to the first-time home buyer program, just so that I can at least help somebody out. Because you're going to get a lot of other opportunities to make a lot of money. So I won't go through that. Here's something that I do want to talk to you about. Because they mandate the federal government and funding recipients to take affirmative actions to undo historic, and we're going to learn a little bit more about that from Matt, historic patterns of segregation and other types of discrimination. These are the people that are responsible for this, right? HUD, state governments, county governments, city governments, any government entity receiving federal funding, housing providers receiving federal funding, HCVs, Mainstream, VASH, 811, and nonprofit and for-profit housing development or low-income housing tax credit properties. But this also includes lending institutions through the Community Reinvestment Act. It also includes the federal mortgages providers and lenders, USDA fund recipients, housing counseling agencies. We talked about the interim rule, but there are opportunities for improvement for us. For example, I know we were here talking about race and real estate, but you ever stop to think how many individuals, I know in Lancaster County, it popped in my head, but in Lancaster County, there are at least 5,600 individuals that are deaf and hard of hearing. And the home buying in that community is very low. I just saw my friend, who I've known for a long time. And what's interesting to me is I've known him for a long time. We have a great relationship, but we've never really spoken to each other, right? He's mute, he's deaf. Real smart guy. When I held a fair housing conference, I made sure to include this community. And I provided ASL, and I had individuals that would translate there. And let me tell you something. The first conversation that I ever had with my friend of 20 years, Louis, the first one-on-one conversation I ever had with him was such an impactful conversation for me, because I had been missing out on his very essence. We went beyond the pleasantries of the hi, the bye, the thank you, we went beyond that and went deeper in our conversation through an interpreter. That instrument of equity that was needed for us to fully enjoy each other's company. So while we are here in race and racism, remember that there are the individuals with disability. Remember that there are individuals that are sight impaired. Remember that there are individuals that are coming in from other countries. Remember there are individuals here that go beyond the scope of race. Race and real estate, very important. We have a historic backlog of obligation that we have not met and we need to meet, but we also have other pockets and other protected classes that have also been far ignored. Individuals with disabilities are segregated. They're segregated in cities because you can't move them out to the rural areas because there's no infrastructure for them to be able to, sidewalks, for example. Bus transportation doesn't go there. They're not near any of the medical establishments that they need. They can't enjoy the amenities. So even though we're not trying to segregate anyone, we're doing it anyway. And when I say we, the global we, in other words, people that are doing the zoning and so on, they're not thinking about the disabled community, which is a huge community. Substandard housing is another area in which we are not affirmatively furthering fair housing. I'm sure if you go through New Jersey and you go through all the counties, you're going to find that there are some substandard housing that people are living in. And if you dig a little deeper, you're going to find that the members living in that housing are members within the protected class. I know for one of the things that I'm doing in Pennsylvania is I'm that constant gnat in the ear of our executive director and the governor, and I'm always talking to, listen, we can't say we're affirmatively furthering fair housing if we still have people living within protected classes in substandard housing. We as a Commonwealth need to do something to push that needle forward. And that is one of my main objectives while I'm there at the PHRC. And the last thing I'll tell you is the benefits. You know, affirmatively furthering fair housing connects to all communities to greater opportunity, which benefits both individuals and their communities. Individuals receive specific cultural, educational, employment opportunities for more inclusive, diverse communities, and those communities will benefit as well. According to the National Association of Home Builders, it estimates that 100 typical tax credit apartments generate approximately 7.9 million in local income. So there are benefits to this. Unfortunately, we hear people come up and talk about, and I know I'm running out of time. I'm going to stop soon, I swear. We hear people talk about the affordable housing. And the minute we hear affordable housing, many of us, it conjures many people to the thoughts of those people. I don't want those people in my area. I don't mind helping those people. I just don't want them in my neighborhood. So I talk a lot about housing affordability because everybody can relate to that. Because what Vanetta can afford and what I can afford, it may be different. And so housing affordability is a global conversation that we all need to have, because that's going to also help us affirmatively further fair housing. So I know I've gone over, and there's my contact information. I want to thank you for your time this morning. And I'll turn it over to you, Vanetta.
Okay, sorry about that. Adrian, amazing dialogue. You know, there was a couple of things that just stood out to me, you know, and I know we're just pushing for time, but two of the things that stood out to me was around that really impacts realtors and how they engage with consumers. And it was around our first time home buyer programs, down payment assistance programs, where, you know, we are aware that, you know, it's a hot market. North Jersey was the hottest market, real estate market in the country, according to NewJersey.com last year. So we understand that houses are flying off the market, and we need to have the best buyer ready to be able to buy the home. However, you know, how are we impacting fair housing when we kind of steer consumers away from utilizing down payment assistance, right? Like, you know, something so simple that can help them get into a home, you know, might not be the most prettiest thing that realtors want to engage with, but by not engaging is really opening the door to, you know, are we really doing fair housing from that component? So that really stuck to me when you, you know, just in part of your conversation. And then I love the component around the diverse abilities. You know, we don't normally always, this is a diversity, equity, and inclusion committee, right? You know, with our 2022 president, Bill Flagg. And, you know, it's not just about race, it's also about, you know, diversity as a whole. And that includes, you know, buyers or consumers and people with different diverse abilities that, you know, I personally never thought about that rural component. And there are some rural areas in the northern central Jersey market. They're small and few, but I never thought about the component that they may have in impacting someone with diverse abilities to moving to a rural area, of not having sidewalks and things like that. You don't even think about that. That's why, you know, having sessions like this, it just gives our members a great opportunity to learn. So thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, that's the biggest thing. I always look for those nuances to talk about, because I want people to feel kind of that impact. It's not my job to be punitive. Just because I come from an enforcement entity does not mean that I come here to lecture people and point the finger. I think that we all have a responsibility to make this world a better place. I think real estate agents get a chance to do that, I think, more often than many other people, because they are at the end of the rainbow of dreams for many people when they are selling that home, that first home to an individual. But I do want to kind of put everyone into that mindset that there are instruments of equity out there that are helping individuals that would not otherwise have that access. And if you kind of spend a little time looking at that, I think you're going to be the better for it. So thank you very much for the time.
Love it, love it. And also, we did get a question just around the presentation. I'm not sure if this was going to be shared, Adrian.
I can certainly share it. I'll send it out to Crystal. Yeah, absolutely.
All right, awesome, awesome. Well, thank you for your time. And I am going to bring on our closer. Dun, da, 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 people. So we have Matt Difanis, and Matt is a DEI expert, guys. You're in for a major treat here. He's really going to be talking about breaking down the changes in the code. So Matt, maybe just give him a little backdrop of yourself and just take it away.
Hey, Vanetta, thanks. It's so good to be here. And I've been swapping around slides based on what was covered or not covered during the first portion of this session. So I'm excited to be here. You know, I tell people that I consider myself one of the world's most unlikely DEI activists and fair housing activists. And that is because of a wildly improbable journey that I've been on in the last few years. I had the privilege of serving as the 2018 president of the Illinois Realtors, and 2018 corresponded with the 50-year anniversary of the Federal Fair Housing Act. So a lot of pretty much everything you're going to hear me talk about was completely not on my radar when I was running for the leadership team and when I joined the leadership team. So virtually everything you're going to hear from me during my segment is the result of a journey that has happened only in the last few years. So with that, and I'm coming to you from Champaign, Illinois. So people think Illinois, they think Chicago, but I'm from 130 miles south of Chicago in the Champaign-Urbana metro area, and I'm surrounded by cornfields. And I'm going to start my screen share, make sure I'm set to go. And here's what I'm going to start with. Fair housing has been the law of the land since quite a while before I was born. And so for me, this picture kind of embodies what fair housing is: ancient history, old dead people, something that predates me, a problem that we had solved. We had I knew enough to know to get my license. I knew we had an uneven playing field, and I knew I had to have the vocabulary to pass my license exam and to keep my license. But beyond that, it was ancient history because the playing field had long since been leveled, problem solved. We just needed to not repeat history, right? And the journey of the last few years has utterly reshaped my perspective on that. I had the privilege of serving as the 2020 chair of the National Association of Realtors Professional Standards Committee. And that means that we are collectively, that 100-plus member committee, one of the largest in the trade organization, we're collectively the keepers of the code. We're responsible for interpreting and periodically revising the code of ethics. And it did not go without my noticing that my predecessors in that same chair were responsible for creating a housing discrimination mandate. Article 34, realtors should never be instrumental in introducing into a neighborhood a character of property or occupancy, members of any race or nationality, or any individuals whose presence will clearly be detrimental to property values in that neighborhood. In other words, if you brought the wrong color person onto the block, a realtor could be brought up on ethics charges and sanctioned harshly. So I'm going to hit a little bit of history because, interestingly, Charlie's first order of business in his term was this really unqualified direct apology. And I watched in horror on various online forums when realtors were furious about it. How dare he issue an apology that would insinuate that we are part of a racist industry and that we, by extension, are racist? How dare he? And, this was less than a year ago, and I had been far enough in my journey and my education to realize right away, I understood where those members were coming from. But the bottom line is, if that was how you would react, it's simply because you don't know enough history. And that's really kind of all there is to it. So what did that actually look like? I'm going to use, while I do have, because I'm doing another presentation in Jersey next week, so while I do have redlining maps specific for Jersey, I'm going to use my home state of Illinois, because Chicago is a tragic example, and it's the one that I've studied the most because it is closest to me. So what did redlining really look like? I'm going to focus on this spot in the city of Chicago. For anyone who's been to Chicago, the area that we're looking at is the area that would be, if you're standing in McCormick Place, the largest convention center in North America, and where NAR periodically holds its conventions. If you're standing in McCormick Place looking south, there's a feeder ramp that connects the Dan Ryan to Lakeshore Drive. Right there, that's the top of that red shaded area, and it goes to the lake and then south. It's an area now called Bronzeville. And what you're going to see next are the margin notes in the Homeowners Loan Corporation redlining maps written by appraisers and realtors. And you're going to see those side by side with some public domain images that the United States government commissioned to document Black America in Chicago at about this time, around 1940 or so. So here are the notes for that red shaded area. The new housing project has the realtors guessing as to what the ultimate result will be when so many of this race are drawn into this section from the already Negro-blighted district. With approximately 6,500 colored people moving into this district, it's evident they can't be closed in, they must have an outlet, and the problem of keeping park and water frontage close by reasonably free of them will be difficult to surmount. The trend of the colored people will now be accelerated toward this park and water frontage, which many people consider could have been avoided had it been located west of Indiana. It is believed, particularly since the advent of this housing project, that this entire section will ultimately go colored, which will increase the number of colored people using the lakefront. Washington Park, pictured here being enjoyed by white ladies in lacy dresses, is already doomed. Black Chicagoans were characterized in terms analogous to an infestation of sewer rats. And this is how it went all over the country. And the realtors' fingerprints were all over it. All over it. Most of us know Dr. Martin Luther King from his civil rights work in the Deep South, but he did spend much time in Chicago, actually briefly moving to the city. This quote says a lot. I've been in many demonstrations all across the South, but I can say I've never seen, even in Mississippi or Alabama, mobs as hostile and hate-filled as I've seen here in Chicago. This is Dr. Martin Luther King in Chicago, having been hit in the head by a fist-sized rock thrown by a white mob while he was doing a housing discrimination march, with the destination being a real estate office. This is not the Jim Crow South. This is Chicago. It's really difficult to fully wrap our minds around what the actual cost of this was, but a study attempted to do just that. Now, I want to qualify it. What you're going to see on the next slide is really looking at one city, one segment, one generation. The city of Chicago, 1950s, 1960s, and just the black population. One city, one segment, one generation. The Plunder of Black Wealth in Chicago. This was published in 2019. So by way of context, in the 1940 to 1960 era, homeownership rate in the United States grew from 43 to 62%. That includes the immediate post-World War II era, where white Americans were given easy access to low-cost, low-interest government-backed loans. Black Americans were essentially shut out, forcing them into a secondary unregulated market of contract sales. For black people, 75 to 95% of home sales to them were that type of deal. The typical markup, 84%. In 2019 dollars, the average extra monthly was $587. Over the 2 decades studied, again, one segment, one city, one generation, the 50s and the 60s, the cost was pegged at $3.2 and $4 billion expropriated, i.e. ripped out, of the black community. This was all before I was born. This was all before fair housing became the law of the land. And while the diverse public school district from which I graduated high school, I didn't go to school with black peers who were the victims of a legalized regime of discrimination, but that's $100,000, $40,000 scholarship funds stolen from one segment of one city's population in one generation. There's no doubt that it is the reason that we still have so much disparity between access to education today. I'm going to set the stage for some of what I'm going to talk about by quoting, and I'm going to quote her twice today, Isabel Wilkerson's book, Caste. A lot of people who look like me think the way I thought until recently, which is not my problem. We fixed it a long time ago. Why is it my issue to deal with? And here are her words. We in the developed world are like homeowners who inherited a house on a piece of land that's beautiful on the outside, but whose soil is unstable loam and rock, heaving and contracting over generations. Cracks patched, but the deeper ruptures waved away for decades, centuries even. Many people may rightly say, I had nothing to do with how this all started. I have nothing to do with the sins of the past. My ancestors never attacked indigenous people, never owned slaves. And yes, not one of us was here when this house was built. Our immediate ancestors may have had nothing to do with it. But here we are, the current occupants of a property with stress cracks and bowed walls and fissures built into the foundation. We are the heirs to whatever is right or wrong with it. We did not erect the uneven pillars or joists, but they are ours to deal with now. And any further deterioration is, in fact, on our hands. Unaddressed ruptures and diagonal cracks will not fix themselves. The toxins will not go away, but rather will spread, leach, mutate as they already have. When people live in an old house, they come to adjust to the idiosyncrasies and outright dangers skulking in an old structure. They put buckets under a wet ceiling, prop up groaning floors, learn to step over that rotting wood tread in the staircase. The awkward becomes acceptable and the unacceptable becomes merely inconvenient. Live with it long enough, and the unthinkable becomes normal. Exposed over the generations, we learn to believe that the incomprehensible is the way that life is supposed to be. I invite you to consider the possibility that the status quo is not the way life is supposed to be. A common refrain from people who have my complexion, which ranges from pasty white to lobster, depending on my sun exposure. Well, I was raised not to see color. This is something I've talked about for years, but a local lender, with her permission, let me use her own words when I saw her post this on Facebook in recent months. This is Fran Hunter, local lender here in my Champaign-Urbana market area. When you say I don't see color, what you think you're saying is I see everyone as equal and you stand proud in it. But what you're actually saying is you don't see me for who I really am. You don't see my roots. You don't see or care to see the struggles I and people who look like me have daily, and that you're blind to it. You don't see the fight and hard-earned accomplishments in spite of, because unfortunately we're not always equal. I've walked into many rooms. I've been the only one. I've been uncomfortable. I've been judged. I've been ridiculed. I've been denied. And so have you, I'm sure, but it was likely not simply because the color of your skin. Let's normalize seeing color. See me for who I am. See me for my roots. See my melanin and ask questions if you have them. I'm brown. I'm a person of color. See my color. So here we are all of these years later. We're almost 100 years past the 1920s version of the Code of Ethics that had a housing discrimination mandate. And you'll recall that the issue in that Article 34 was detrimental to property values. You bring the wrong color on the block and you're going to tank the values. And here we are, dang near a century later, and still making headlines in major national news outlets are stories like this. For Black homeowners, a common conundrum with appraisals. This is a quote in the article. Because I'm Black, we realized that he, the appraiser, picked the houses from the Black side of Park Hill, says Lorenzo, an IT engineer and tech developer. That was the first red flag. Dismayed, the couple scheduled a second appraisal, but this time they decided to experiment. Gwen, who's white, remained alone at the home to greet the appraiser. Second appraiser gave the home a value of $550,000, a $145,000 increase from the first appraisal, with, of course, the only difference being deblacking. This is the New York Times. Black homeowners face discrimination in appraisals. So this is a similar deal. Second appraisal. Before the new appraiser could arrive, Ms. Horton, a lawyer, began an experiment. She took all the family photos off the mantle. Instead, she hung up a series of oil paintings of Mr. Horton, who's white, and his grandparents that had been in storage. Books by Zora Neale Hurston and Toni Morrison were taken off the shelves. Holiday photo cards sent by friends were edited, so only those showing white families were left on display. On the day of the appraisal, Ms. Horton took the couple's 6-year-old son on a shopping trip to Target and left Mr. Horton, the white guy, alone at home to answer the door. New appraiser gave the home a value 40% higher than the first one. It's happening all the time, still today. Fair housing is not an issue that is history. It is something we deal with now. The most, probably the most famous expose in modern history for our industry was the now well-known Newsday expose. I'm going to play for you about a 1-minute clip from this, and we'll talk about that on the other side. So we'll go there.
In one test, Johnny Mae Alston was the black tester and Cindy Parry was the white tester. And they met with
Anne-Marie Quealy-Bichon at Signature Premier Properties office in Cold Spring Harbor.
They asked for the same thing. As often happens, the agent discussed getting pre-qualified or pre-approved for a mortgage by a bank, showing how much a buyer can spend on a house.
You pre-qualified, I asked. My husband's working with somebody in a bank.
We've done some preliminary talks, about getting pre-approval.
Neither had been pre-approved or pre-qualified. Here's what the agent told the black tester.
So I really need that. I won't take out any money unless you have a pre-qualification letter. So I need to know that I can't pre-qualify for a mortgage.
Oh, so that means I can't go out to see anything.
I won't do it. You can try another person, but I don't have the time.
And without pre-approval, here's what the agent told the white tester.
What is your availability? When can you start looking at houses? I would say not this coming week.
Cindy received 79 listings from this agent. Johnny Mae couldn't get any listings. And Cindy, the white tester, received 2 home tours. They had the same finances, the same budget, and they made the same request in the same area. But one was white, the other was black. The agent treated them differently.
Now, it's very tempting to look at something that is that overt and think, well, thank God I'm not a bigot in Long Island. And I urge caution. I urge much caution, because implicit bias by its very definition is happening in your subconscious, in my subconscious. People can honestly say, I don't have a discriminatory thought anywhere in my head, and they're being honest and truthful. And yet that does not mean there's not wildly disparate impacts because of a whole subconscious autopilot process that is happening without the agent's knowledge. So that one looks pretty crazy. I'm going to show you a more subtle one. So this is a transcript to the black tester. But it's some definite backup options. If you don't like the homes, if they're too small, too much work, if you want to upgrade the house, you got to downgrade, not that it's bad, but we're just going to downgrade the location or the town just a little bit. And then we're going to try to get you more house. To the white tester, but like usually coming from the West, some of these towns, in my opinion, they're not necessarily the greatest in terms of school districts, safety, crime, resale, and some of them are very expensive. You're not really getting much there. In other words, and I believe that in most of the agent cases that are in this expose, most of the agents had absolutely no intent to discriminate. Most did not know they were doing it while they were doing it. And most would have had no idea they did it until, and not even necessarily then, they were confronted by the hidden video footage and the transcripts. But look at the difference in the messaging. If you're black, your dollar will stretch farther here. If you're white, run for your lives. The schools and the crime and the safety will kill you. And the agent had no idea. Part of my improbable journey, I was unaware of any of this stuff when I first started my journey on the Illinois Realtors Leadership Team starting in 2016. And then I realized, now, hey, wait a minute. We represent 50,000 members. And in 2017, our 28-member board of directors was 100% white and almost 70% male. And at that point, it did occur even to me, hey, wait a minute. I feel like we might not be doing this quite right. Now, I didn't have a roadmap. All I knew was what had not worked. So I didn't have a roadmap. I didn't have a secret decoder ring. I was just a white guy from the cornfields that was determined to do anything I could to build bridges where I knew that we had either failed to failed to build them, or in some cases had organizationally burned them down. And so I decided I would go anywhere and show up. And I thought from just from just a human empathy standpoint, I felt like it was disrespectful to claim to want people who don't look like me at the table and just throw money, sponsorship dollars, check a box, we've taken care of diversity. I felt like if I were on the receiving end of that treatment, that would be pretty insulting. And so my attitude became, I won't ask you to come to my table if I'm not willing to sit at yours, if you will have me. If you will have me. And my life has been dramatically and permanently changed because an awful lot of people took leaps of faith on me when I showed up with an open heart and an open mind. But at that time, I personally did not deserve the leap of faith. And as the representative of a white establishment organization with a ton of baggage, certainly in my capacity as an organizational representative, did not deserve the leap of faith. And yet, while this is not my lived experience, I have had so many friends that have given me a front row seat and have pulled back the curtain, and in so doing have allowed me to see things that I can't ever unsee. And so you're going to hear, I've gotten very used to being the only white guy on a lot of rooms in the south side of Chicago. And not uncommonly, the only white guy for the last couple of miles of the drive to get to the room where I was going to be the only white guy. This was actually a photo I snapped when I pulled up to a real estate event, a dedication for an education center at Zeke Morris's office. Zeke Morris, by the way, just a couple weeks ago was installed as the first ever black president of the Illinois Realtors in its 105-year history. Zeke's office, I think, Greater Grand Crossing maybe is the neighborhood that it's in. I was pulling up to an event at Zeke's office, and this was the scene behind it. People assume that the streets are running with blood and a hail of bullets, and this is what Chicago looks like. This is what the black community looks like. This was the scene in Zeke's office as they were dedicating an education space to ensure that the black real estate community had access to good educational opportunities without having to drive to the Mag Mile where the Chicago Association of Realtors offices are. One of the transformative experiences, one of many, for me was my friend Nakia Pippian McGriff. She just finished her term as the first ever black female president of the Chicago Association of Realtors, an organization that would have barred her membership on the basis of skin color alone until 1963. She is a friend, she's an influencer, she is a hero of mine. And one of those transformative moments was I was already starting to learn about the history of housing discrimination in 2017 as the organization was preparing 50-year commemorative stuff. Nakia and I had been in the National Association of Realtors Leadership Development class together in 2016. So we knew each other from seeing one another at state meetings, but I got to know her much better during the course of that year. So here she is with her son, Xavier Joy. And just in June, so just weeks before I was installed as the Illinois Realtors president, Xavier was shot and left to die alone in a dark parking lot off of 63rd Street within earshot of Nakia's home. She heard the gunshot that killed her son. And I got a front row seat to watch how she handled that. I was invited some weeks later. I was at the funeral. I do a lot of photography and videography. At the last minute, she said, I don't know if I'll be able to ever watch it, but if you're still willing to make that offer of photographing and videoing the services, I'll take you up on it. So I sat in the private family service, in addition to the public one. And in the course of watching her deal with that, was introduced to so many other people. And here's somebody else whose son was shot to death. Sat in Congressman Danny Davis's office, whose grandchild was shot to death. This was a neighborhood canvass done by Crime Stoppers a few weeks later. This was in September. This was very shortly before I was installed as Illinois Realtors president. I got a text from Nakia asking if I would be willing to participate. I didn't know. It was a friends and family group. I suspected I might be a demographic outlier. The photo confirms that I was. We're standing just a few feet away from where Xavier's body was found after he was shot to death. So lessons learned in my time on the south side of Chicago. Black real estate professionals often do half the work, or twice the work for half the pay. That works out that way because the typical prototype client is going to have more complicated circumstances. There's a lot more puzzle pieces to put together. You might have multiple gig worker paychecks that you have to cobble together. And if you get all of that to work out, if you're working in the black community, the prices are going to be much lower. So you will do twice the work for half the pay. Looked askance when working in predominantly white neighborhoods and suburbs. What are you doing here? How did you get a listing out here? Presumed by white colleagues to have unqualified clients. They often have to diversify their businesses to withstand recessions, low black homeownership rate. So I have a ton of my friends that are running very small boutique shops where they are doing brokerage plus property management plus development plus construction. And in my case, my friend Turquoia's case, also is a city certified lead inspector and gets other certifications. Wildly high compliance stuff that makes my head hurt to think of, because she has to be more versatile than I ever have to even imagine to make sure that she's got her income streams diversified and can handle the perilous economic state of the black community in which she works. Brokers of color are badly underrepresented in our total realtor population, but it is even worse in leadership circles. And I credit my friend Sarah Ware for this theorem, which is in the black community, it is a luxury for us who are realtors, for those of us who are in volunteer leadership positions. That is a luxury. I'm not going to even consider that if I am not yet able to make my house payment and feed my family. But when you look at all the headwinds that our black colleagues face, the number that can get to that critical mass so they have the luxury of volunteer leadership causes an even greater bottleneck, which means we even more badly underrepresent realtors of color, but specifically black realtors in high echelon leadership positions. Funny thing about glass ceilings, people that look like me tend not to see them. Totally invisible. Until I watch people that I love bounce hard off of glass ceilings I didn't know were even there. And normal human nature would say, that hurt. I'm not doing that again. I'm going someplace that values people that look like me, that come from where I come from. I'm not doing that again. It is a minority of that minority that says, you and your glass ceiling stay right there. I'm going to grab a battering ram and I'll be right back. The level of courage and persistence and ferocity that it takes to shatter those ceilings is just staggering. And they have to be willing to be the only one in the room. And it's not just being the only one in the room. The stories that I've heard more times than I can count, I knew I would be the only one. I stuck my neck out. I was going to go get involved in organized real estate outside the black community. I knew I'd be the only one. I was. I showed up. Everyone looked at me. I kind of got the stink eye. And then very often the story ended with, and not a single person talked to me. Racist slurs and hate speech still remain a common reality. And we have people that are constantly anticipating the next racist, dehumanizing episode that they will encounter simply while selling real estate while black. While I was chair of the NAR Professional Standards Committee, we ended up with something I had not seen coming, but we ended up with this issue of discriminatory hate speech, where then President Vince Malta asked our committee, because he had gotten multiple requests, look at this issue, see if you can do something about it. He didn't say fix it. He didn't say do something. He said, look at it. And so we did. And my concern was I had this 96 or so % white committee. I don't know if it was exactly 96. I just know people of color I could count on my fingers, and the committee had over 100 members. And my concern was amazing volunteers, every single one of them. But could this committee wrap its head and its heart around the issues facing black America as we had to consider this? So I had a panel on race and real estate, and absolutely no holds barred, candid conversation. I'm going to play for you about, less than a 2-minute clip from Joanne Poole, former president of Maryland, who was one of our panelists. So here is that. Give me an example that comes to mind of a time where you have been cost business or been put at a disadvantage because you showed up, and it turns out when you showed up for something, you showed up black.
Yeah, I'd be happy to share. This is one that I don't think I'll ever really get over, and it really happened more than once. And making the appointment is one thing. Having a customer, client, whether white or non-white, didn't make a difference. But when I showed up at the door and knocked on the door, and the owner opened the door and said, they're allowed in, but you're not. Okay, so I turned to my clients and said, do you want to go in? And they said, if we cannot go in with you, we will not go in. This was a house that everything they wanted matched. Everything they wanted. So, and they were a white couple with me, and we had to walk away. Reporting it to the listing agent, and she says, oh, well, that was the owner's decision. That is not pro standards answer. Right? Absolutely not. But that's the position that they decided to take. That has happened multiple times, just over a few years. It wasn't like back to back, but over years that has happened. So, yeah, it has cost. And I don't know if it cost me more in embarrassment or in money in my pocket.
Realtor colleagues, this is not ancient history. This is happening everywhere. This is Michelle Mills Clement. She's the CEO of the Chicago Association of Realtors. She was hired and started in first half of 2018. Michelle's from the south side of Chicago. She grew up in the Pullman neighborhood, but was moving to Chicago to take this job from Washington State and was going to rent. Her office is a corner office on the 8th floor of the Realtor building overlooking the Magnificent Mile. And initially she wanted to do a high-end, high-rise rental within walking distance of the office. She called her south side friend and designated managing broker of a real estate brokerage, Kimberly Offord. When the black south side agent made an inquiry on Michelle's behalf about a high-end rental, the landlord's representative said, well, is your client a voucher holder? With, of course, the implication being, how could a black south side agent possibly have a client for this rental that could possibly afford it on her own merits? To say nothing of the fact that, as we was already discussed, in New Jersey and in Chicago, discriminating on the basis of voucher holder would be illegal anyway. So here's what we ended up doing last year. Very quick coverage of our changes. People argued. I got so many objections and pushback. I was carrying a lightning rod through a thunderstorm for a few months last year, and people were like, get in your lane, NAR. Stop. When did you become the victims of a communist takeover? Get back in your lane. I want to remind you all what NAR's lane is. Our mission is to empower realtors as they preserve, protect, and advance the right to real property for all. Preserve, protect, and advance the right to real property for all. Housing discrimination, discriminatory hate speech is a real, meaningful impediment to making real property accessible to all people. So here's what we did. Realtors must not use harassing speech, hate speech, epithets, or slurs based on race, color, religion, sex, handicap, familial status, national origin, sexual orientation, or gender identity. Most of that verbiage is the protected classes we already had in the code. The new part, realtors must not use harassing speech, hate speech, epithets, or slurs. This stuff is not a victimless crime. We do not get to say, no, that's private bigot Matt on his keyboard at night because I have clocked out. That is not how this business works. That is not how our identity as realtors work. And no matter how off the clock you think that is, anyone who is the victim of that sees it, even if it originated during my quote unquote off hours, which end as soon as a lead comes in, of course, anyone who sees that, to them, the housing market and the range of available service providers just shrunk. This is our lane. So as succinct as that is, two-step analysis built in. Is it harassing speech, hate speech, epithets, or slurs? Being an a-hole by itself is not enough to run afoul of this. Now, I don't encourage you to be a-holes. It's a bad idea for lots of other reasons, but that won't do it by itself. It must be based on one of the protected classes. So hopefully everyone recognizes, okay, this is pretty narrow. And we should be doing this. Also, keep in mind that under the Code of Ethics, anyone has standing to file. There is no legal standing requirement, so be an ally. Don't say to somebody who's the victim of discrimination or hate speech, hey, I've got great news. We officially frown upon that sort of thing in this establishment. We have a new rule. Here's a stack of forms. I'll send you the link to the PDFs. You can fill them out. You can pick up the torch. You can carry it over the mountain, and someday something bad might happen to the person that did that to you. Do not make the victims of the discrimination carry that torch. Be an ally and make it mean something. I'm going to close out my segment with another quote from Isabel Wilkerson, because there's this issue of, so once you learn the history, if you look like me and you learn this history, and every time I think I've peeled all the layers off the onion, I realize there's an infinite number of layers still waiting to be peeled back. My journey will be ongoing for the rest of my life. But it's very easy to get weighed down with all of the horrible, horrible baggage. We cannot overstate just how much damage our industry has done to Black America and all people of color to varying extents. So what do you do with that? What do you do with all of this? And so I quote Isabel Wilkerson. This is at the end of her book, Caste. When an accident of birth aligns with what is most valued in a given caste system, whether that's being able-bodied, male, white, or other traits in which we had no say, it gives that lottery winner a moral duty to develop empathy for those who must endure the indignities that they themselves have been spared. It calls for a radical kind of empathy. Empathy is not sympathy. Sympathy is looking across at somebody and feeling sorrow, often in times of loss. Empathy is not pity. Pity is looking down from above and feeling a distant sadness for another in their misfortune. Empathy is commonly viewed as putting yourself in someone else's shoes and imagining how you would feel. And that could be seen as a start, but it's little more than role-playing, and it's not enough in this ruptured world that we live in. Radical empathy, on the other hand, means putting in the work to educate oneself, listen with a humble heart to understand another's experience from their perspective, not as we imagine we would feel. Radical empathy is not about you. It's not what you think you would do in a situation you've never been in and perhaps never will. It's the kindred connection from a place of deep knowing that opens your spirit to the pain of another as they perceive it. Empathy is no substitute for experience itself. We don't get to tell a person with a broken leg or a bullet wound that they are or are not in pain. And people who have hit the caste lottery are not in a position to tell a person who has suffered under the tyranny of caste what is offensive or hurtful or demeaning to those at the bottom. The price of privilege is the moral duty to act when one sees another person treated unfairly. And the least a person in the dominant caste can do is not make the pain any worse. And my last anecdote on this, ironically, is taking a past president of the Dearborn Realtist Board, which predates NAREB, by the way, oldest black trade organization in the country. I was doing a video shoot of elders from the organization back in March, and I'm a very involved member of the Dearborn Realtist Board, so I know all of their leaders, I thought, but I hadn't met this one. This is Madam Past President Laverna, and I'm miking her up for a video shoot. And she heard me, so I just met her for the first time. Turns out I had not met her before because her husband was dealing with end-of-life issues, and that plus the pandemic. This was about the first time she'd ever gone anywhere. So she's just meeting the strange white man in the Woodlawn neighborhood of Chicago, and she heard me mention that my wife is Filipino. And this was back in March, shortly after those Atlanta massage parlor shootings. Madam Past President Laverna looked me dead in the eyes and with an amazing amount of sincerity said, "I feel so bad for what Asians and Asian Americans are dealing with right now." And I'm stunned. My wife is a very typical immigrant success story. And I looked back at her and I said, "Madam Laverna, I don't know you, but I know enough about your organization, its history, this city. There's no way my wife has ever dealt with anything within orders of magnitude of what you have had to live through." And Madam Laverna looked at me and very gently, very diplomatically acknowledged that what I was saying was, of course, true. And then she stared right through my soul and said, "But when we see it happen to other people, we know how that feels." And she is my radical empathy poster girl.
I'm
assuming Vanetta will be back someday.
I'm back. Oh my God, Matt, this was, let me just quote the person in the Q&A, aside that they want the presentation, but this was powerful, and informational. Several takeaways that I have was really around understanding your history, but not just understanding the history, but understanding how you may benefit from the history and how others may have disparities from that history, that exact same history. And I loved how you brought in the house and living in the house forever. And it has all this, you got to take the good and the bad that comes along with it. And, also that biases, with the Long Island realtor in that video, the biases come in all different shades, whether they're implicit or disparate. I agree with you. I don't even know if those people, maybe some of those people even realize their actions, right? Like, people just do things and don't even realize, those actions behind it. Go ahead.
And to your point, I remember if you watch the entire behind the scenes video that Newsday has posted, I remember, if you look at either of those quotes on the slide where you saw the two different transcripts, neither one was treated impolitely. And there were segments of the behind the scenes where the testers were debriefed together, a white and a black tester side by side. Black tester had no idea. She was treated respectfully, politely, and it was only when they're side by side that you can watch the moment where the black tester realizes, oh my gosh, There was nothing overt, and I just realized I was subjected to a totally different experience.
Exactly. And being in this industry, I speak to people all the time, and when they talk to me about their home buying experience, I see the disparate treatment that they may have received, but them giving me the story, they don't even realize that it just happened to them. I can see how that woman, the Black woman, totally didn't realize what was happening, what was happening to her. So just really great call out, Matt. And I love how you kind of wrapped it up in the fact of NAR. And this is the mission, to protect, to preserve, protect, advance, the right to real property for all. And anything that you can do can tie into, are you really protecting that right? So, I have a call to action for everybody, kind of just really offer, all of you guys presentations and tying it all together. Educate yourself. Like it starts with you. And Matt, you said you came into this arena, 2-3 years ago. And how your thought process was 5 years ago is not your thought process of today. And it only became like that because you walked into a room and said, hold up, something's not right. And maybe I need to change. And maybe I need to look at myself and see what can I do inner to be able to make some changes from an outside perspective. So, we all have room to grow. I'm a forever learner. I'll raise my hand. But we all definitely have room to grow. So
one of my moments of realization, Vanetta, was I started to realize the stuff I described doesn't tend to happen. It's not that I wear blinders. And of course, as I became more aware, I was doing everything in my power to remove any that I had on. The reality is, for people that look like me, this stuff doesn't happen where I can see it. It's outside my field of vision, and it still usually is. But the problem with that is it means my senses are telling me it's not happening. And the reality is it's still happening, and it's happening everywhere.
Love it. I love it. Can we bring the other speakers back on? Adrian, Charlie. All right. Welcome. Guys, you guys, first of all, hold up. I heard you all. This was absolutely phenomenal. And, I know I did my call to action, but if I could maybe just ask each of you maybe to just give one call to action, one takeaway that you have, that you would like for our members to take away. And Charlie, I'll start off with you.
Well, thanks, Vanetta, and thanks, Adrian and Matt, for great presentations. I've had the honor and pleasure of working, as I said earlier, with both of them. And I've known Matt for many years at the NAR level, and I've just really met Adrian recently a bunch. And, my biggest takeaway is when you look locally, you see one thing. When you look nationally, you see something else. So for me, because I've served nationally the last 5 or 6 years, locally for me, we're in a diverse area in northern New Jersey, and it's always been that way for me. So our local board has had, the old Eastern Bergen County had more diversity than other boards I saw around the country as I spoke a little bit. I know all the same people that Matt knows in Chicago and in Illinois. I've made many of them part of the leadership team. We have the first Asian American vice president at the National Association level that I'm aware of. Okay. And he's from Chicago, a gentleman by the name of Tommy Choi. And the one thing I can tell you, and Michelle Clements is a chairperson. Nikea was I think she was president the year that I was making selections. So we try to give more people opportunities, but I've known Nikea and Sarah and all the leadership team. Some people that Matt didn't mention, there's a young guy in Chicago by the name of Moses Hall. I think Moses is 27, 28, 29. We made him a vice chair of a committee in 2020 and a chair in 2021. He attended an event recently and was asking some questions, a commercial event. And the speaker, a gentleman by the name of T. Dallas Smith from Atlanta, said, "You're going to have obstacles. Power through them. You're good enough. And if you believe in yourself, make a difference." And I would offer that to anybody here. If you see something wrong, change it. Make a difference. Right? Silence is no excuse. For me, the opportunity I've had this year, and I think you have to be intentional, is to get more people involved and create more diversity in the National Association, but it all starts locally. And we all know who's involved locally. And if you see somebody that you think can be an asset, tap them on the shoulder and say, let's do this together. Because it starts with somebody asking. So I would just offer that we need to do a lot more, but think about where we were a year ago, 18 months ago. We wouldn't have this conversation. So I think that's a big, big movement forward, that Matt and Adrian could make their presentations comfortably. And even if they move somebody to do something or they offend somebody, they've educated somebody. And that's where it starts.
I love it, Charlie. Thank you. I love it. I love it. I agree 10,000%. Definitely where it starts. And sometimes we need to be comfortable being uncomfortable. And I think that's where we started off today. So thank you for that. Adrian.
Thank you. I want to thank the NCJAR for the invitation and the interaction that I've seen on the Q&A and the chats. Matt, tremendous presentation. Charlie, always a pleasure to see you and get your perspective. I think that the one thing I always tell our investigators and anyone that I meet is that fair housing is a 360 view. And if there's anything that we've learned from COVID, is that the patterns of the past have floated to the surface. The people that were being oppressed and the people that had the largest wealth gap has bubbled to the surface, and now it's on everyone's radar, right? I congratulate the NAR and I congratulate all the DEI committees that are really taking a proactive step in showing that empathy and being educating themselves about implicit bias. You can never get enough of that, because really at the end of the day, we need to take care of things that circulate that fair housing 360 view, because anything in and around that fair housing is something that we need to look at. The other thing is, when we're working in this field, we are not going to get any closer to Martin Luther King Jr.'s dream than being in this field. As I stated before, those of you that are in real estate, standing at the end of the rainbow of dreams for people that want homes, and that should be everyone. You just have to get out there and make sure that you're looking at everyone as an individual that has the right to the access and opportunity to housing without any discrimination. You do that, kind of like Matt did. He took a page out of Michael Jackson's book and started with The Man in the Mirror. I congratulate him on that. That's why I'll leave it. Thank you.
I love it, Adrian. And I love your analogy is that they're at the end of the rainbow for home ownership. I'm stealing it, just putting that out there right now in public.
No problem.
And Matt, how about you?
Well, I want to respond to something that's in the Q&A, which is, is this going to turn into a fad that just comes and goes in a year? Because I've heard that more than once. This is not a fad. This is not fashionable. In fact, I woke up this morning, and as soon as it wasn't inhumane to do so, I texted an Illinois Realtors committee chair, and I said, I just realized we have 5 out of 16 on this committee that are Black, and it's not a fair housing or diversity committee. I said that would have been unfathomable a few years ago. And no one else, I noticed, I haven't heard anyone else make that observation, which means it is now accepted that Black volunteer leadership is normal and the way things ought to be. And so this will not be a fad, but it is imperative that we keep it in our consciousness. I came to the sad realization in the last couple of years, I won't live long enough to see the damage undone that my industry has done to Black America. And so the best that I can do is do everything I can literally for the rest of my life to undo as much of it as I can. I could use some help. I could use friends and allies on this journey. There is much work to be done. For those who are from New Jersey, you've got a discount for At Home with Diversity. If you want to learn more and get more specifics and have more resources, you've got that opportunity available to you. And I'll say something I said. Charlie said that this year's the year to do this. So I've been pissing people off and ruffling feathers long before the last 18 months. But one of the things I said in 2017 when I was installed as Illinois Realtors president, go seek out organizations that cater to people who do not look like you, and get involved there. It has changed my life.
Yeah. Matt, I would just say one thing to that, Vanetta, if you can. When I made the apology and when we went down this road in the beginning of the year, you'd be amazed at how many messages I got that said, "What are you doing? You know, that's not your job. Stay in your lane." That's the ones that I can say on air, if you will. And to me, it was, you know, that's not going to stop me. You know, that's not going to change the way I think. You know, I was fortunate enough to attend 2 or 3 weeks ago, the Martin Luther King Memorial Foundation 10th anniversary celebration. And Matt mentioned Zeke Morris earlier, who's the first African-American president of the Illinois Association of Realtors. He was sitting next to me, and we've been friends for a long time, long before he was in the leadership of Illinois, and quite frankly, maybe even Chicago. That's how long I've known him. And we sat next to a gentleman by the name of Frank Williams, who's, Matt, you would know better than me, a realtor for 50 plus years, and moved into a neighborhood that didn't take kindly to the fact that he owned real property. And he was
worse than that. He was selling black people houses in Beverly.
Okay.
And he was black in Beverly,
Yep.
married to a white woman, got expelled from his high school in Flint because he was dating a white girl who he married. Yeah.
Yep.
I was at his 50-year business anniversary reception.
And I only met him for a couple hours, but he had stories, and he was across the table, and he just looked at me and he looked at Zeke. He said, "Yeah, you guys make it look normal." And that's the way Frank was. You know, we just chatted all night. And if you know Zeke's not the tallest person. And we were at an event where he stood back to back with Magic Johnson, who's 6'9". So when we took pictures at the beginning of the night, we stood back to back because I'm 6'3". And the only thing he said is Magic was nicer and taller. So because I was picking on him a little bit. So, you know, you have to be comfortable addressing, as you said, Vanetta, the uncomfortable, because that's the only way we can all make a difference. And I just look at, you know, this panel and Bill Flagg for taking the initiative to continue the conversation, and hopefully it's not the only one we have all year.
Love it. I love it. Thank you all, gentlemen. Thanks, NCJAR. Thanks, Bill Flagg, for putting this together. You know, and I'll quote Robert White, the New Jersey Realtor 2022 president, you know, saying thank you all. It was a powerful presentation and message delivered. And guys, no, this is, you know, the diversity committee. We did. This is our 7th event right now for 2021, and we have a whole lineup for 2022. So get ready, sit back, relax, and join us for the ride for next year. Gentlemen, I appreciate you. Again, I do heart you, you know, to the side, and have a fabulous day. And remember, educate yourself, people. It's worth it.
Thank you all. Good to see you, Matt and Adrian. Bye, Vanetta.
Good to see you, Charlie.
Thank you all.
Bye-bye.